You're invited to a birthday bash.
Come on in and take a closer look.
Is this a costume party?
Hi, I'm Felicia Rashad, wishing Newton's Apple a very happy 10th anniversary.
Newton's Apple is made possible by a grant from 3M, encouraging innovative ways of looking at the world around us. 3M, innovation working for you. And now, here's your host, David Heil.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome to Newton's Apple, the program that answers your questions about science, technology, and the world around us. Our first question comes from a first grader who worked on this section of a much larger AIDS quilt. Her name is Megan Bainbridge. She writes, "Every day you read something new about the HIV virus and AIDS. What is a virus, and why is AIDS incurable?" Well, here to help us understand why AIDS is so deadly is our resident medical expert, Dr. Bruce Dan. Welcome back, Bruce.
Hey, Dave, it's good to see you again.
All right, why isn't there a cure for AIDS?
Well, you know, to understand AIDS, you have to understand the virus that causes AIDS, and that virus is HIV, which stands for human immunodeficiency virus. And to understand the viruses, it's a complicated matter.
All right, let's start right there. What is a virus?
Well, you know, a virus is the smallest microscopic, I should say submicroscopic, infective microorganism. Here's an example of one right here, a model of a virus. It's actually a model of a cold virus. It's got a protein coat on the outside, and inside there's genetic material. But what makes viruses much different than any other disease-causing microorganism is they're not living cells. Matter of fact, it's not living because it's too small.
Okay, you keep saying too small, so I've got to ask you, how small are we talking here?
Well, you know, you're talking not microscopic anymore, you're talking submicroscopic. You have to use an electron microscope, not an ordinary microscope, to actually see it.
Give me a scale.
Well, let me give you an example. You know, we've talked about human cells many times before.
Okay.
They're very small, you can see them under a microscope. Well, you could put about 10,000 human cells in the period at the end of a sentence.
In
okay?
average, that
right.
many. Okay.
And they're pretty small.
A lot of cells.
Well, let me show you something. Pick that up right for me.
What is this?
There you go. Well, that's my model of a human cell. Okay? Now imagine...
Enlarged,
right,
just slightly.
Just a little bit. Imagine that's one of those tiny, tiny human cells,
Okay.
all right?
10,000 of these in the period at the end of a sentence.
Right. But here is a virus. Look how small that is compared to the cell.
Wow, very
right.
small.
And there's an advantage to being this small. It can actually penetrate into the cell and use it. It depends on living things for its own life.
Okay, so if it's not alive itself, how is it that it's depending on the living cell for it to survive and keep its integrity?
Well, cells like this, cells we've talked about before, have, you know, genetic machinery. We've talked about DNA, the genetic material, which produces proteins that allows us to metabolize things, acquire food, get rid of waste products. Well, viruses are too small to hold all that genetic material. So actually, they enter into cells, take over the genetic machinery, and use living cells architecture for their own. They're sort of like pure genetic information. Some people refer to them as software, not hardware.
So they really use the hardware, if you will, of the host cell.
Yes, like a computer and using some software, that's right.
All right, now what's so unique about this HIV virus?
Let me show you. I have a model here of an HIV virus, and it's got an outside protein coat, just like we've talked about before, and inside it's got some genetic material. But this is different. It doesn't have the DNA that we all have and most viruses have in the inside. It has RNA, and that's what gives it a different character. It acts a little differently. Matter of fact, when it infects a cell, it does something differently. Let me show you a computer animation I have of how it does that. When HIV enters the body, it attaches to the outer membrane of the cells. It releases its own genetic message inside the cell. Through a special HIV enzyme, it converts RNA into DNA. It takes over the genetic machinery, like we've talked about, and begins manufacturing copies of HIV. And they release new viruses to go infect other cells in the body.
Bruce, this HIV virus must be a pretty formidable virus, pretty strong, huh?
Well, you know, people would think, David, that because AIDS itself is a pretty devastating, life-threatening disease, that the HIV virus itself is a very strong virus. It's not. As a matter of fact, it's a very weak virus. It's sort of known as the wimp in the virus world out
now,
there.
If the virus is so weak, how come it causes a devastating disease like AIDS?
Because this virus, unlike other viruses like cold viruses, this virus attacks the immune system, and that's the reason for its devastation.
Let's take a moment and look at a normal immune system and function. How does that work?
Oh, the immune system is very complex, David, but to understand that, you sort of have to get into the immune system itself. I want you to imagine, if you would, you were in the immune system in the bloodstream of the body.
Where are we?
Well, welcome, David, to my microscopic world of the immune system. This is going to be a self-defense drill right here in the bloodstream.
You've got a uniform or something on.
Well, I've got...
Wow, you're all dressed up there.
This plays a role. I'll tell you about that in just a minute.
All right, so we are inside the body, actually.
We are in the bloodstream itself.
Okay, so what's this big round thing over here?
That's a cell, David, and you can see there's a membrane on the outside of the cell, and semi-permeable. Things can go in and out the membrane.
What's this black thing right here?
I think it's a secret agent, a foreign particle, David. It's sneaking its way up and identified itself, and it's invading the cell.
Right inside the cell through the membrane.
Right, it multiplies and makes more copies of itself.
Wait a minute, here's another one.
One more over there sneaking around.
Now, what are
stealthy
these
little
garbage
creatures.
can things?
Those are part of my immune system. Those are the macrophages. They're not very smart, David, but they're always going around the environment looking for things, kind of be a detective and looking at identifying different things. And once they've identified a foreign particle, they engulf it and immobilize it, and got bagged up there. And
so that's a specialized cell in the body at all times.
And of course, they tell me what they've identified, and I am the commander-in-chief of the entire immune system, the T helper cell.
So you're the general of the whole operation?
I'm the head. I'm the commander-in-chief.
General, I think your macrophage wants to say something to you.
One of my troops. The macrophage is now identified. That foreign invader is David, the flu. Call to arms, a flu invasion has taken place.
So that's all these viruses. Whoa!
Oh, there's my troops.
Those are your troops.
The elite
corps. Straight for the cell.
Those are my killer T cells.
Look at all the viruses coming out of that cell.
That's exactly right.
And what happens to the cell itself?
The cell itself is killed if it's an infected cell, but these are my elite stormtroopers. These are assassins of the immune system.
Wow.
The killer T cells.
Wow, I never thought there would be that many viruses.
Oh, more viruses.
There's still a whole bunch of
viruses. Well, then we have to call in troops. Come to action.
Now, what is this group back here?
That's my big guns. That's the plasma cells manufacturing antibodies. See them manufacturing, and they're firing them into the bloodstream to attack and kill viruses who are twitching before us here. And those are the antibodies that are really sort of the heat-seeking missiles that kill bacteria, viruses, and other invaders of the immune system.
You've got a lot of divisions to pull out
Well,
here.
that happens a very formidable foe of the immune system.
It's an impressive system, Bruce. Now, why doesn't it work for HIV?
It's a very interesting question, David. And I'll tell you what, I want you to hold my helmet here.
Okay.
All right, just hold that, and I'm going to take this off. And I'm going to place the mantle on you.
I'm going to be the...
You're going to helper T cell,
helper
David.
T-cell.
You're going to now become the master of the immune system, and these are all your troops. Put the helmet on.
Okay.
And I want you to command all your troops that you have here, and you're going to command the immune system against HIV.
Let's inspect these troops
You've
here.
got your macrophages.
The macrophage cells, the killer T cells.
Right, and they're the plasma cells, and what do they make?
Killers, and the plasma cells are making the antibodies.
Right, you got all these at your command. Go ahead and defend yourself against HIV.
All right, I'm ready for the infection. All right, there's one now, so it's going to go, looks like it's going to go attack the cell just like before. Okay, so now if another foreign object comes in, the macrophages should be able to get those. Oh, here they come. Okay, macrophages will get the foreign objects and bring me the message. Hey, wait a minute, you guys are supposed to... Where's the macrophages? Hey, Bruce, this isn't supposed to happen, is it? What's going on? I need a message from the macrophages. I can't even get to the alarm and get the crack team. They're the ones that are... I need to call... What about those... Bruce, what happened there? Those viruses came and attacked me.
Yeah, that's exactly right, David, and that's the reason that HIV is such a devastating disease. You know, other viruses attack a host of other cells, but HIV specifically attacks the T helper cell, the leader, the commander-in-chief of the entire immune system.
I couldn't do anything.
Without you, without the general of the army, it's all in a disarray, and, you know, we become deficient. Our immune system allows us to be susceptible to other agents and other viruses and bacteria, so that's why we call it the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome.
AIDS. So basically what HIV infection is all about is just breaking down the normally functioning immune system.
Right, and leaves you defenseless against the rest of the world.
All right, let's take this a step further, Bruce. What's the difference between being HIV infected and having full-blown AIDS?
Once you get the virus in your body, you're HIV infected, but it takes a certain length of time to develop AIDS. As a matter of fact, if you measure the number of T helper cells in your blood, there are about 1,000 in every cubic millimeter of blood.
In a normally operating immune system.
Exactly, but once you've been HIV infected and it destroys a lot of the T helper cells, it may diminish that number down to about 200. And at that point, we define it as AIDS, and at that point, your immune system is so deficient, you can't fight off all the other invaders into the body.
All right, Bruce, thanks so much for coming in and explaining how HIV actually disables the immune system.
Always glad to be here, David.
I think we can all understand now why AIDS is so deadly. Still, we've only touched on a fraction of the information available to help us understand AIDS more fully. If you'd like to know more, please contact your local health department or call the National AIDS Hotline. That number is 1-800-342-AIDS. We'll have more in just a moment.
Why do we snore?
Because they're dreaming.
Because we're tired. Yeah.
Because they had a hard day at work.
Your air passage is blocked. The sound is made by the vibrations in your throat. The loudest snore reached 69 decibels. Yikes! Grab the earplug.
Street smart.
Every year, we throw away 28 billion glass bottles and jars. That's a sad fact when you consider that each one of these could have been recycled instead. How does that process work? I decided to find out by following my empty root beer bottle from the recycling bin to the factory.
First, the glass has to be collected. Each bottle is placed in a separate bin, depending on its color, either brown, green, or clear.
Hey, can I catch a ride with you?
Sure, hop on. I'll be done in a minute.
Okay.
Only glass bottles and jars can be recycled. But other glass materials, like windows, light bulbs, and ceramics, are created differently and can't be mixed together. After finishing their neighborhood pickups, the recycling trucks bring the glass to a central transfer station.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Here, the glass is inspected, and anything other than bottles or jars is removed. Then the glass is loaded into a semi-truck and continues on to the factory.
Okay.
Soon, we arrived at a recycling plant of the Anchor Glass Corporation, where I met John Svobodny, the finished products superintendent.
Hello, David. Welcome to Anchor.
Hi there, John.
After arriving, the glass is dumped into piles, still separated by color.
John, doesn't look like too many of the bottles made it whole either, huh?
No, at this point it's considered cullet.
Cullet, that's what broken glass is called?
Correct.
Why is it so important to separate the glass green, brown, clear, etc.?
Each color has its own composition. In order to make a good final product, it has to be right.
So there's no way that we can take a brown bottle and turn it into a clear canning jar?
No, with the coloring agent that we use in the amber, we can't take that out. We can't take the brown out.
But we can turn it into another brown bottle,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
All right, I guess it's time to begin the process.
Before it can be melted, the cullet has to be crushed into very small pieces. This happens in the cullet processing system. The cullet still contains some things besides glass, like labels and bottle caps, which need to be removed. As it travels up the conveyor belt, the cullet passes under a large magnet that pulls out most of the metal objects. When the cullet reaches the top of the conveyor, it falls into the glass crusher, breaking up the cullet into smaller and smaller pieces. Next, a huge vacuum removes any loose labels and aluminum caps. If any pieces are larger than a quarter, they're sent back to run through the system again until all non-glass objects are removed and each piece of glass is crushed small enough.
That's great. So then what you end up with is almost clean glass at this point.
Right. The cullet goes into our batch system, and the batch area consists of sand, soda ash, limestone cullet, and then a few minor ingredients for coloring agents.
So you're actually mixing the recycled glass with the original raw materials that would make glass.
Right.
Is there a cost savings to using the recycled glass?
Actually, it costs us more to buy cullet than it does to buy our other ingredients.
What's the incentive then?
Energy, David.
Oh, and lots of it.
This furnace is where each batch is melted down.
Take a look
It takes a
inside
lot of energy to melt both cullet and the raw materials. But cullet melts at a lower temperature, which can reduce the energy needed by up to 25%. The molten liquid flows out of the furnace into the bottle forming machines at a temperature of 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. bottles are formed into the proper shape and then blown hollow with air. More than 250 bottles are created each minute, and at this point, there's still 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit.
David, you see a mercury bottle in there?
Very high. The bottles then travel through the cooling system, which consists of a series of fans that gradually cool the bottles to prevent them from cracking. A few bottles from each batch are then inspected for the necessary quality, including proper weight, size, and visual appearance. It takes almost 45 minutes for each bottle to move from molten glass to a finished bottle.
Well, Dave, after it's caged back here, it's off to the customer.
So in a sense, this is the end of the line for manufacturing the bottle.
Right.
At least until it comes back to be recycled again.
Yeah, there you go.
This has been great, John.
Thanks,
so
Dave.
much.
Well, our root beer bottle has become a steak sauce bottle. Now we buy it, use it, then recycle it, starting the whole process over again. Which reminds me, I'm really hungry. Care to join me for lunch?
Is there something that you're curious about? Send your science question to Newton's Apple, 172 East 4th Street, Box 1000, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55101. Drop us a line.
I really think there's been some sort of misunderstanding here. I don't know anything about a large sum of money.
Sure, sister. Tell it to the fishes. Shut up.
Hey, Peggy,
What?
how does cement work?
Maybe you've noticed, Bob, but I'm a little tied up right now.
Yeah, beat it.
On second thought, wouldn't you like to know every single detail about cement? Actually, cement's not the problem. Cement is just a fine gray powder. It's when you start adding water and sand and gravel, it starts turning into concrete. And that's when it starts to be a problem. At least it's a problem for me. Actually, it's like making a souffle. You know, to make it rise, you have to have the right ingredients, which means you have to get the recipe right. And it's so hard to get good help these days, don't you think?
I got the same problem.
Shut up.
Cement itself is actually the glue that holds concrete together and makes it hard. And in this recipe, the ingredients have to have very specific chemical elements: calcium, aluminum, silicon, and iron. The two main components are limestone and clay. But if you don't happen to have those laying around the house, you can substitute chalk and shale. You grind them vigorously, mix well in exact proportions, bake slowly at 2,700 degrees until just a dull gray, and that partially fuses the material into lumps called clinker. Then you grind this clinker into a fine powder, add just a tiny touch of gypsum to keep it from hardening too quickly, and there you have it, cement. Now, as long as this cement powder stays very, very dry, I'll be okay.
You wish, girlie.
Kind of what I was afraid of. You see, there's actually two reasons why concrete is so strong. One is the strong chemical bond between the particles, and the other one is the particles bond with an enormous amount of surface area. I mean, if you could measure every side of every particle of clinker in a pound of cement, you'd probably have as much surface area as in this whole pier. So with all those particles bonding with all those surface area, it makes the concrete incredibly strong. But see, water is the key here. When you add water to cement, it starts a chemical reaction, and it hardens into this rock-like mass of great strength and hardness and weight, a lot of weight. Do you have something in a sling bag?
Oh, that's funny. You're a riot.
Inside this paste, there's a process called hydration going on. The particles are surrounded by films of water, and they react almost immediately, making a cement gel. So in a few hours, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. This is called setting.
Yeah.
You know, in a couple of days, this concrete will set up, even harder and stronger than it is right now.
Yeah, especially underwater. How do you think they built those bridge supports?
Yeah, well, that's why they call it hydraulic cement. But the concrete has to set up first, or the river currents would wash it away.
We can wait. You in a hurry? Shut up!
No, I'm not in a hurry. That's not what I meant at all. Anyway, the result is a complex interlocking matrix of cement, gel, and crystals that's incredibly strong. Are we going somewhere?
No, we ain't. We's gonna see how you can hold your breath.
No, you know, water really doesn't agree with me. It makes my skin wrinkle. Did I mention to you why skin wrinkles? It's really quite fascinating
Quit
after all.
stalling. Come. What? It's the cops. Let's get out of here.
That'll teach
mess with me! Do you have a chisel on you, Bob?
The thrill of competition is normally associated with athletics, but it's also being used to spark an early interest in science, as kids from kindergarten to 12th grade find out in the Science Olympiad. We caught up with a few of these challengers at Minnesota's state finals. Let the competition begin.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Does this look like science? How about this? Or even this? Actually, all this fun and games is science. It's the Science Challenge, where students, through a great deal of preparation, theorizing, and trial and error, enjoy the excitement of competition and the discovery of science. It's time to meet the Science Challenge. So, what's your theory?
Wider at the bottom and then make it smaller towards the top.
It's basically, it's going high in the air and coming down doing circles, and when it hits the ground, it glides along the ground for a while.
At first we had a longer wand, I don't know why, but we decided to shorten that so it'd be easy to travel.
Challenge. Build a 2-meter newspaper bridge able to support weights continually added to it until the bridge breaks or the weight falls.
This is going to go on the bottom to hold, it can hold more, because all the weight's going to be on the bottom.
Uh-oh. What happened to that one?
There's a bad rip in the paper.
Sort of a U shape in the middle, and as the weights increase it, the legs will come towards it, hopefully holding more weight.
Challenge. Design a lever system which enables a ball to clear various heights as well as hit a numbered target.
If I wanted to land at 3.67 meters, I'd catapult up with the line, and I would hook it up with this wire, and it should hit 3.67 meters.
So far, it's been pretty accurate, and I don't know, I just hope for the best.
We have two different springs. This one's for like smaller millimeters, and this one right here is for larger.
Challenge. Support a baseball with materials contained in a single brown bag. The emphasis is the height and width of the tower.
We could find some way to we could have them sitting up, and we could put something like this on,
And make the structure loose so you can bend it around to fit the baseball's weight.
Well, idiot.
Judges, how did they do?
Okay, I got 67.6 centimeters.
289. 5. Oh, let's go.
With teamwork and experimentation on their side, these young people welcomed the Science Challenge and won. There are very few animals that I would never expect to see in our studio, either because of their size or their particular disposition. But folks, this next guest happens to be one of them. Nancy, whatever made you think of bringing a wolverine into the studio?
Because they are so fascinating, and pound for pound, they are the most ferocious animals. And brought to us by Steve Kreschel, who is brave enough to hand-raise one.
So you've raised this guy from...
Since he was just a little pup.
A little wolverine.
Right, yeah. And this is one paw, and he's a year old. Did you see that one foot as he was twisting around there?
He's got huge paws. Look
Huge
at how big
paws.
they are, yeah.
And they act like snowshoes. They're from the Arctic and subarctic regions. Come on back up here. Come on, one paw.
You're just swiveling around
right.
here.
They're from the Arctic and subarctic areas, and they use those great big feet for like snowshoes and catching all the different types
So they can
of
actually
prey.
stay on top of the snow.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Even though they probably weigh, what, 30, 40 pounds?
40 pounds.
Yeah, and
boy,
those
this-
that thick fur, yeah. Yeah, and that fur, it's double layered. It's got that real thick inner layer, and on the outside layer, this is the guard hair.
Now, what is a guard hair all about?
It just protects them, and it keeps them extra warm.
Okay.
And interesting enough about these guard hairs is a lot of people will use them on their parkas or on their face because Wolverine fur does not retain moisture. so it doesn't frost up. Right, right.
Smart.
They're in the weasel family, and they're related to otters and skunks and badgers and mink.
They look a little bit like bears. Even.
Yeah, they do. And Native Americans used to call them the skunk bear.
An animal with this much energy must want to
Eat a lot.
take over a lot of territory and eat a lot.
Eat a lot, right.
What does this look like in the wild?
Well, they've got big, big territories, about 100 square miles. And that's the males. They'll actually overlap with several of the female territories also. And, of course, that comes in handy when breeding season's around.
And breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a wolverine is?
Well, during the summer months, they eat a lot of ground squirrels. But in the wintertime, their diet can change a little bit, and they can go after bigger food because they do have these big snowshoe hare feet. They will actually take down a deer. You can see the stamina and this endurance
so
right here.
Just hold up
just keep it, yeah.
on the chase and out
right.
do a deer.
They can go 35 miles an hour. And, you know, they've got the great fur, the short ears that can condense the heat, and those wide paws that get them over all that snow.
And 1 ton of energy.
Oh, can you believe this? Steve, you deserve an award.
The wolverine is definitely not out of energy, but we're all out of time.
Right.
So, unfortunately. Nancy, thanks so much for setting this up for us today. Steve, what a trooper. And thanks for bringing one paw in. This is great. I'm going to invite the audience to come on up. I want you to be careful. Obviously, this is a wolverine, so come cautiously and take a closer look. That's all the time we have right now. We'll see you next time on Newton's Apple.
Newton's Apple is made possible by a grant from 3M and its employees, dedicated to innovative thinking and scientific learning. 3M, innovation working for you.